Hi there. Emmett the God Singer here. Let's talk about pets. As you can see, I have Steve, my little buddy. He's an Indian ringneck. I've had him for about 5 years now, and he is terribly attached to me. So he'll give you kisses, and he talks, and hey, Steve. Steve. And he answers you, looks for me whenever I'm not around. He looks for me, and he'll walk from room to room till he finds me. So, but he's pretty cool. I hope he's around for a good long time. You can get a better shot of him there that way. But he's a good kid. When I was 18, I had forced moved out of the house when I was 18. Because my dad actually moved away, and I wanted to finish high school in the same school. That's another episode. So I finally got my own place, and when I was about 19 or 20, I had a decent job, and I could finally get my own pet, and I wanted a dog. So I was looking through the classifieds. This was like 79, 80, and no computers. So I was looking through the classifieds, and I found this ad in town. Belgian Shepherd, 6 years old, needs home, well trained. And that's all it said. So I gave him a call, and, I went up the next day to look at this Belgian Shepherd. It turned out she lived in this little house in this little quiet neighborhood, and she lived with an older man, and he had died. And the neighbors, he didn't have any family, so the neighbors had taken the dog and were taking care of it. So they didn't know much about it. She had a little metal tag around her neck, simply said Susie. No phone number or anything, just Susie. And something struck me about this dog. She was terribly overweight. And, for a Belgian Shepherd. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna take her home. So I took her to the apartment, and she was very obedient, very quiet, very calm, like an old dog. I always liked old dogs. But she was very calm, very obedient. Did anything you said. And, first I put her on a diet, and she wasn't really crazy about that. But after 4 or 5 months, she slimmed up, she lost about 15 pounds and was where she should be. And she was a great dog, but she still never did anything bad. And I noticed she would do things like she would open the door for me, and she would make sure the stove was shut off, and she understood complete sentences. I mean, you didn't have to say, go, sit, stay. I could say, go into the kitchen and get me a Coke out of the fridge. And she would do that. She would go there, open the door, and bring in. And she was, go out and get the paper for me. She, I'd let her out. She'd go down the driveway, get the paper, bring it back. Never did anything wrong. So I started doing research on why his dog is so smart. And I looked up, not the dog, but the owner, his name, and looked up some history on him. It turns out he wasn't completely blind, but he was legally blind enough to have a seeing eye dog. So I called the Guiding Eyes for the Blind, which was the biggest agency back then, and I said, is Susie a seeing eye dog, and do you need her back? He says, no, she is a seeing eye dog. She was well trained. Once they reach 5 years old, we can't rehome them, so you're welcome to keep her. So I got to keep her. I was really happy. We got along. I mean, she did everything. You had to actually teach her to be bad, okay? I mean, she never did anything wrong. Never went in the house. Always took care of herself, and me. She's always around. did anything you wanted to, walked right by your side, like a seeing eye dog would. And we got along great. Best dog I ever had up to this point. My dad didn't really like animals in the house, so we never had it except for a cat. I mean, I always had a cat around. I don't know why that was, but anyway, I mean, I was married. I had gotten married, and Susie was part of the wedding, and I could take her. And since she was a seeing eye dog, I could take her anywhere. I could take her in stores, and back in the early '80s, late '70s, they didn't allow animals in stores. But she was a seeing eye dog, and even people that don't like dogs would say, "You have the nicest dog." I mean, my grandmother didn't like dogs, and Susie would come over and sit right beside her and put her paw up on her lap, and my grandma would start petting her, and changed her mind about dogs real quick, at least about that dog. Susie was that kind of a dog. But I noticed, I would leave her at home while I went to work during the day, and I noticed, the water and the food wasn't disappearing in the bowl when I got home. And a couple of days when I got home, I saw her coming up the street and going into the backyard and letting herself in the back door. And I was like, what is she doing? She was disappearing during the day. So one day I was off, and she didn't know I was going to be off. I drove down the street, and I just sat down there in my little truck and waited. And within 20 minutes, I saw her coming out of the backyard and turn the corner and walk down the street. So I followed her down the street, and she walked about a half a mile down to the corner. She made a right turn and walked down the street. I mean, the total distance probably wasn't half a mile, 3/4 of a mile at the most. But there was this little tiny, they weren't really apartments. It was one, it was shaped like a big U with a garden in the center, and there were these little senior housing. There was only like 6 units there in a garden. And I saw her turn into that, and I pulled up to there and watched her go up to a particular house right in the middle of the left side. There was 3, 3, and 3. And she scratched on the door, and it took about 30 seconds, but the door opened and she went inside and the door closed. And I sat there, I wonder what's going on. So I went up and knocked on the door. And, at this time I had had Susie for about 2.5 years. So she was about 8.5 years old. And I went and I knocked on the door, and the lady answered. I was like, "Yes, can I help you?" I said, "I just wanted to meet you because my dog, she's been coming to see you, I think, for quite a while now." And I noticed this lady was very old and very frail. I mean, she had to be in her mid-80s at least, if not older. But she says, "Oh, dear," and she's got this really sad look on her face. And she said, "Well, you better come in." So I came in, and I saw Susie. Susie looked very surprised to see me. She's like, she thought she was in trouble because, she never get in trouble. And she never gets in trouble. So you could have a look on her face that I've never seen before. And I said, "It's okay, Susie. It's all right." And she came up and put her head on my lap, and, I petted her. And we got to talk. I got to talking to this lady, and she said, I didn't know her name because I had taken her tag off. I didn't know her name. I call her Sweetie, and she answers to Sweetie. Yeah, I've called her Sweetie before too, and she does answer to Sweetie. And she said, "She's such a help. She comes and she helps me walk from room to room. She can turn the stove off when I forget. She'll bring me my medicine if I ask her for it, And I've just never had a dog. I mean, my kids live in another state, and they never call. And she's just such a help to me. And I'm like, you know what? I think she is a help to you. I think you should stay here. Sweetie, Susie, would you like to stay here? And I say, I'll tell you what, I will pay for the food, so you're not out any money. If you put a rope on the door, she can open the door and close it by herself, and she'll take herself to the bathroom. You don't even have to do that. And gave her all the particulars, and that's how I lost Susie. But I think they grew old together, and Susie, being a seeing eye dog, she needed to be serving somebody. And I just wasn't the one. I was gone. I was working all the time. I just had a new little baby, and she was getting more and more left out. So I think that's why she went and found this person to begin with. I have no idea how she found this person. This person needed her so badly that I'm convinced that an angel walked her to that house. What other explanation can there be? But Susie was a great dog. And I'm glad that I found her a home where she could serve out her life and help somebody who truly loved her and truly needed her. And that's a God thing. Some things are just God things. There's no other explanation. But we'll have more stories later. Steve will be around for a good long time, won't you, buddy? Well, we'll get nice close and say bye, Steve. So, we'll see you next time. God loves you.